Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video we are looking at Micron. It is time for another update, and today we continue to focus on the smaller time frame here. Well, relatively small. We are focused on this wave to the upside, which is within one of two interpretations most likely. So here, for context, we are either within a wave C that could mark a quite substantial top within a larger wave 1 to the upside, but at the same time this could be a larger wave 3 to the upside, an impulse part of a much larger uptrend that would be expected to extend quite high and to be followed by a series of 4-5 structures once we have this structure, this wave 3 to the upside complete, without having very deep retracements, unlike in the white structure where we would be looking afterwards for a wave 2 correction. Now, the positive part about all of this is that within both interpretations we expect with high probabilities to form at least a wave 4 correction in the blue structure and then a wave 5 before we would assume either white or yellow scenario to be actually complete. Now, for this to be the case, we would need to, of course, reach the area of support starting at $321. And unless this is the case and we extend directly higher, I would have to assume this would be achieved through this orange extension to higher prices, which has actually been a preference for us. Yeah, the structure, the count would look more full with this expectation followed through. However, we have started to doubt the reliability of this orange structure, since we do start to get a quite out of proportions correction within this as a wave 4. Now, at this point it is still fine, it can still work out, and especially towards the end of a larger trend. Yeah, consider we would be within a wave 4 of a wave 5 within an ending diagonal of a quite extended movement to the upside. It's not uncommon to get extended corrections within such a wave 4. Although it is certainly not ideal, not typical of what we would expect based on the proportions we had within this matching wave 2. Nonetheless, it is still possible for it to extend higher, and that will be our main interpretation as long as we do not reach the blue support zone. And before we move on, I want to briefly remind you that if you enjoyed the video, it would be greatly appreciated if you leave a like. If you want to keep up to date, don't forget to subscribe. And if you enjoy our content and you want to support us directly, don't forget to check out our channel membership. And as a thank you for any of these actions, any of these are greatly appreciated, I would like to invite you to join our channel newsletter, which is completely free and provides you access to our monthly top picks, where we identify for you high quality structures such as this blue support zone that would allow us to look for what is expected to be quite a substantial movement to much higher prices in a follow-up wave 5. Now, getting back to the chart, within either wave 4 in the previous video, orange or blue, we have been tracking this white interpretation of a larger ABC structure. In the previous video, we hadn't yet formed a reset of this push to the downside of this overall correction, but it was rather expected, and we have followed through within our smallest time frame expectations of building an impulse within this area. Now that this is in place and we see the result of what followed afterwards, we have to readjust our expectations because we had a roadmap, but that was also for guidance when we needed to start looking for something else, and without going through what would have followed after this extension to lower prices, we discussed all of this in the previous video, we can see the result, we can see the extension to higher prices, and we have to make a few assumptions, a few options are left for this movement, for this structure. So either we would still be looking for extension to lower prices in this wave C, not within this exact count anymore, but here we do still have a couple of options, or where we would have a bottom in place within this orange wave 4. Now, for the idea of an extension, I would have two options. So either we have a wave 3 bottom in place, we would have a wave 4 correction in place, and a wave 5 would still be forming continuation to lower prices. or this wave 3 would still be ongoing and this would form a larger A, B, C structure, yeah? Without going through the exact internal structure, I can tell you I verified and this is a possible interpretation. I can find a pattern that works within all of these interpretations, but in terms of resistance, for the idea of a wave 4 taking place here, I could allow a correction up to the 61.8% retracement. And we can notice here that we have actually gotten quite a substantial break of this area of resistance, which makes this a substantially less likely interpretation, but still plausible to me, because within the daily time frame, for example, this was not a sustained break. Now, I repeat myself, this is not my preferred interpretation. I would find it, if we are to extend to lower prices, probably more likely to have here a larger extension of the wave 3 in an A, B, C pattern, which would allow me to look as high as the 78.6% retracement for the idea of resistance. But for the purposes of keeping this chart less cluttered, we will only hold here the 61.8% retracement and the 78.6% retracement. Yeah, that is all that is really necessary at this point. Now, in the case of having a bottom in this wave 4, I would have to assume that this structure would have formed something like an A, B, C pattern here, which can work out to have a full structure within this as a wave C, or I could be looking at this to have been something like a WXY structure instead, where I would probably even need to consider this to have been the top, but the exact count is not very relevant at the moment, and I can tell you that from a structural perspective, I do still prefer the white interpretation, where a wave 3 would still be extending to lower prices, yeah? That would fit better in terms of structure. It would still fit within the interpretation of an ending diagonal within this wave C, nothing out of line within this expectation, but even then, I would still be looking for the possible failure of this extension, and for that I would be watching the $418.7 level to be broken, and we would have actually a very relevant area of support internally within this structure, as we might be forming even an impulse in this push to higher prices. So within this structure we have a couple of options. At this point we only have 3 waves to the upside. In this wave 5 in orange, we are looking to build an A, B, C structure. So technically, it could go even within deeper retracements, but this wouldn't necessarily be interesting to us. What would be interesting, however, is if we manage to build here an initial 5-wave move to the upside, and then we would be able to look for this to be a larger A, B, C structure still, but we would have an initial 5-wave pattern within the wave A, and we would have a high probability trade setup internally within a follow-up wave B. Of course, below the area of support for the wave B, we would still be looking for a failure within one count or the other, because this as a wave B could just get a reset without any issue, even if we break the previous swing high. Yeah, not a problem. But again, I want you to focus on the areas of support, on the areas of resistance. These are the most important, and for us, it is either that we form an impulse within this area, which could provide an interesting opportunity afterwards, or we extend into the blue area of support. These are, from my perspective, the only interesting outcomes that could occur. Anything that happens in between does not really interest me, does not provide a particularly high probability structure, high probability trade setup. So from my point of view, we could just ignore every other interpretation. Unless we follow either one of these, we can sit back and relax and wait for an opportunity to be given. And if we do not get one on this chart right now, there are tons of other opportunities, and yeah, we even provide them in the newsletter. So with all of that said, let's move into the actual support zone, into the actual structure we want to see unfold within this area. So I was mentioning here an impulse, yeah? A 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. Now, at this point, I'm not necessarily convinced we have reached the ideal target for this wave 3. I would estimate that yes, we would have reached it. So yeah, we have just pushed beyond the 138.2% extension, but ever so slightly. However, we did reach the ideal target. We can track with some degree of confidence a wave 4 Now, this is not to be confused with a trade setup, because within the idea of an ABC pattern, this would be a full structure, wouldn't need any additional extensions higher. But rather, what would be interesting beyond this wave 4 support zone would be that a break of the 50% retracement would signal to us that this structure has failed to create a reliable pattern to the upside, that we are looking to either build an extension in the larger wave 3 to the downside within a wave C, or a larger ABC structure, yeah, something like that. Potentially even a double 1-2-1-2 setup, but that would be highly unreliable, especially if we break the 50% retracement here. Now, we have this area of support to still look for continuation to higher prices, and actually let's track this in orange. This is actually ideal to follow through within the orange interpretation. And once again, for a summary, I would still like to see this wave 5 to the upside unfold, but it does not need to form this as a 5-wave structure. However, without this 5-wave structure, this shouldn't necessarily be something too interesting for us. Yeah, because we would not have a high probability structure. We could just as well, instead of forming this as a larger ABC pattern, fall through where this would have been an ABC structure within an ABC pattern. So the bottom line is that below the $395.5, we would have failed to create an interesting pattern to us, and the only interesting opportunity that remains below the $395.5 level is the blue area of support, which at the moment only starts at the $321.5. Yeah, I say at the moment because if we extend higher within this wave 5 in orange, well, we would need to also adjust the area of support for the blue expectation, yeah, for the blue wave 4. But for now, this is all you need to focus on, yeah? The break of the $418.7 level would be a signal that further extensions would be likely, yeah, outside of this wave 3 we are tracking in white, and a break below the $395.5 would be rather a signal that, yeah, we should probably let this run and unfold within a more clear structure. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to subscribe and let me know what else you would like me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.